Well, I'm over 60, and just recently I was diagnosed with PTSD. And I thought, isn't PTSD something that combat soldiers get? I was never in combat. And so I started reading about it and found that certain behaviors that I've been noticing lately. I've been taking classes, like so many people of my own age, taking classes to be a better person, to be more productive, do things better, and have found that certain things have just stopped me in my tracks. Certain projects, certain steps, certain actions, I just, without actually thinking aloud that I won't do those, I just stop, don't do them, and go make a sandwich or pour myself a glass of water. So I wondered, what is this? What causes this? And so the PTSD has many different symptoms, but this is one, these avoidance. And you wonder, what am I avoiding? Well, my PTSD is from early discipline. My mother has talked with me about it, and there was a lot of harsh discipline as she tried to make me into the best possible future adult that she could. But she was also unhappy with her marriage, and so there were a number of other factors that may have influenced how ferociously she disciplined me over simple issues, childhood issues. And that's starting pretty young, you know, so whether I was in the 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s, or a little older, I began learning how I must figure out how to not be struck. How do I behave to not be struck, not be hit, not be slapped or beaten or spanked? And so the behaviors I developed were survival mechanisms for my little 18-inch, 2-foot, 2.5-foot body to survive being raised by my disciplinarian mother. And what I see is that with the best intentions, folks trying to figure out parenting on their own can often, when they run aground, can't think of how else do I stop my child from doing something that troubles you, and how quickly an adult can return to hitting, particularly if that adult was hit when they were little. And so being hit, being humiliated, being slapped, being frightened, remember, these little tiny bodies are looking at somebody who is a giant. This adult is much bigger than they are, and being struck by that adult is a huge shock for this little tiny body. Now, what happens to the little kid is the little kid starts developing neurological wiring that says, okay, don't do these things that make that person do that. So a little child that reaches down to pick up a piece of candy off the ground and is struck and told, don't do that, you know, leave that there. The parent believes they're just protecting their child from getting sick from eating a piece of dirty candy. The child, however, isn't thinking that way at all, and the child's body is taking this action much further than the child's mind is. The child's body is registering just the way an adult might register if you were there when the silverback gorilla jumped over the wall and attacked you at the zoo. You might never visit a zoo again because you'd be afraid the silverback might come out and get you. And you might also find that when you saw a picture in National Geographic of a silverback gorilla, that you suddenly began to shake and your heart began to race, and you slammed the magazine and threw it down, and you were irritable and told people to leave you alone, and you didn't even know why. So this PTSD is serious stuff. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's a whole bunch of us grown-ups out there that have PTSD from frustrated parents who have also been beaten, may have had PTSD themselves, striking us and thinking that this is the natural thing to do. The striking just came to me, so it must be just a natural thing to do because that's what I did. But the fact is, if you learn some alternatives, like talking to your kid, like taking a breath and saying, oh, wait, before you put that in your mouth, don't put it in your mouth, come here, come here, come here, come here, come here, come here. And you take it out of their hand, and you wash their hand, and you say, don't eat the candy off the ground, because it can make you sick. Actually, don't eat any food you find on the ground, because it can make you sick. And you've got a little kid in that situation that is listening to you, and you may have to tell them again, sometimes a piece of candy down there might be looking pretty intriguing, but to lash out can have long-lasting side effects. It would be okay if it just meant that a 60-year-old grandpa and grandma don't bend over and pick up candy off the sidewalk because that's what their folks told them and struck them, and that was the only side effect. But if the little kid's wiring says, oh look, this is interesting, and as they reach for it they're struck, then their combined mental and physical wiring says, ooh, don't start to do things that are interesting. Don't start to do things that you want to do. Don't start to do things that you find fun. And those kinds of vague but wired in guidelines, survival guidelines from striking a little tiny kid are not what the parents wanted, and certainly that's not what the kid wants when the kid gets older. And you find the kid doesn't play games, doesn't travel, doesn't seek promotions, a variety of things like that, a much greater effect than the parent ever intended in stopping them from eating the fallen food. So, if there's a way to encourage, to learn about the alternatives of talking to your kids, talking to your grandkids, so that you pass along your wisdom, your experience, without charge, without violence, without excitement, then you have people growing up much more healthy, much more communicative, and without the demon, the demon of the childhood wiring that came from violence.